You take him out of the population and you make him be by himself or herself. Solitary confinement. It's like when you're punishing someone and it's not working, what you do to really punish them is make them be alone. Just think for a minute what it would be like to be in solitary confinement. Maybe for a week. Maybe for 2 weeks. Maybe for a month. I don't know about you, but somewhere in there, I would lose it. But if I did not have contact with another person for a week or 2 weeks or a month, somewhere in there I would just absolutely lose it. I'd suggest to you that Job, he can lose his possessions, he can lose his family, his health can go down, and he'll maintain his integrity and praise God. But if he even gets the hint that God's not with him anymore, that he's alone in his suffering, he just begins to lose it. I'd suggest to you that that's how this book is working. If you look with me, chapter 38, this is where God finally enters into the equation, which, by the way, just to take note of, there's 37 chapters of all these friends talking. You don't hear from God at all. So Job's starting to feel alone. It's like as you're reading through these chapters and chapters and chapters of these friends' speeches, you want to know, well, where's God? And that's what Job is feeling. It's a brilliant piece of literature. Finally, chapter 38, God speaks. I want you to look with me at the answer, beginning in chapter 38. Then the Lord answered Job out of the storm. He said, "Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set, or who laid its cornerstone while the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy? Who shut up the sea behind the doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness, when I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place, when I said, 'This far you may come and no farther. Here is where your proud waves hold.'" So he's talking about creation, how he set the world's foundations. And he was basically saying to Job, where were you? I was there. Where were you? Look with me at verse 25. I think this next section is great. Who cuts a channel for the torrents of rain and a path for the thunderstorm to water a land where no man lives, a desert with no one in it, to satisfy a desolate wasteland and make it sprout with grass? Does the rain have a father? Who fathers the drops of dew? So like out in the desert where nobody lives, who's there to watch as the rain comes down and that flower or grass sprouts up? Are you there, Job? Who's there? As you get into chapter 39, it says, "Do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you watch when the doe bears her fawn? Do you count the months till they bear? Are you there? Do you see it? Do you know what's going on?" Rhetorically saying, I do. When you get into chapter 40 and 41, there is a discussion of these great beasts, the behemoth, the leviathan. Some think the behemoth is a hippopotamus or an elephant. Some think that the leviathan may be a crocodile. And there's a description of them, about how their teeth are lined up. And the idea is, Job, you can't get close enough to them. They're massive beasts. You can't get there to see what they're like. But I know every intimate detail about them. And Job, having heard everything that God says, finally repents. That's how this book works. Now, there are two schools of interpretation when it comes to the book of Job, how this entire book works. School number one says this, that all the things happen to Job that happened to him, his friends come and discuss everything with him. He finally is questioning God. God, where are you? And God finally shows up in power. And he says, I'm God. I created everything there is. And you're just a man. Who are you to question me? And Job, having seen the majesty and the power of God, says, whoa, I was totally out of line. I was completely off base. God, forgive me. You are God. I'm just a human being. Whatever you want to do, you can do because you're God. I'm just a human. I accept it. And therefore he repents. That God just shows up in power and overwhelms him with his powerful presence. That's the first school of interpretation. And it's as though God, when Job realizes who God is, he says to himself, man, who am I to question him? That's one school of interpretation. The second school of interpretation, which I actually think is much closer to the intent of the text here, is this. That all the things happen to Job that happen to Job, and finally, Job is left with this question. God, where are you? And the thought that is in his heart is that, God, you've abandoned me. And God shows up and he says, no, I am always with my creation. When I set the foundations in place, I was there. Out in the desert where no one else is, when the grass comes up, I'm there. When you see these great beasts that no one can even get close to, I'm there. And Job comes to realize something in the midst of this speech. That God is always with his creation. He is always with his people. He never leaves them. And when he hears this speech that God is always there, he repents and he thinks to himself, how could I have ever thought that God would have left me? See, I think for Job, he can lose all of his possessions, he can lose his family, he can lose his health, he can be sitting in ashes, scraping his sores with pottery shards, and it'll be all right with him if he knows that God's with him. But if he even begins to suspect for a minute that God is not with him, that he's abandoned him, then he just loses it. And God shows up and in a very powerful way says, I am always with my creation. I am always with you. And when he realizes that, he repents. He realizes that God has continued to be with Job through everything that he's gone through. And that, I think, is the brilliant message of the Matthew Christmas story. That God is with us. No matter what we're going through, no matter what we're experiencing, no matter what dark cloud hangs over our head, and like Joseph in the story, we're stressed out by whatever's concerning us, God is with us. Maybe I'll end this way. My favorite Christmas memory, or one of my favorites at least. A few years ago, I think my daughter was about 2, maybe not even quite 2. We took her to see fireworks during the Christmas season at Tradition. First time that we ever took her to see fireworks, so we're excited. We've got her excited because we're telling her, oh, you're going to see fireworks, it's going to be great. She's anticipating the whole thing, but she has no idea what it's going to be. We get there, it begins to be dark, we find a place, we sit down, she's pumped up, they're about ready to start. Finally, boom! That wasn't what she was expecting. And I'll never forget it. She comes just running to me, throws her arms around me and says, Daddy, 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 I'm scared. And I turn and I whisper in her ear, don't worry, honey, I'm right here. I'm right here, nothing's going to happen to you. I'm right here with you. One of my favorite Christmas memories. You want to know why? I don't think any parent wants to see their children scared or frightened, going through tough times, whatever it is. But there's something in my heart that just loved that she had her arms wrapped around my neck and I could say, don't worry, I'm right here. I think that's what Christmas is all about. I don't know what dark cloud may be hanging over you, whatever struggle you may be facing, whatever it is that's stressing your life. But whatever it is, the idea is that you're supposed to run to God and throw your arms around him. And it's as though he just whispers in your ear, I'm with you. I'm right here. Emmanuel. Do you get that? That to me is so powerful. This idea that in Jesus Christ, God's with us. And like Job, no matter what it is we face, if we know that, that's all that matters. We don't know why whatever's happening is happening. But if God's with us, we don't have anything to fear.